Alright, after cutting the stock air intake tube at about halfway where that tab was at, it gave me enough clearance where I could bolt my bracket up to this tab that comes up from behind the ECM. What I found is that on the older Outlanders, there's a tab that actually come down lower, about midways of the ECM, that I would be able to use this center hole on your bracket. But this model, it's one of the newer ones, they changed the brackets, and so the tab is actually higher. So all I did was just use the bolt that holds the brake line to the bracket, put a washer behind it and in front of it because the nut is a little bit smaller than the hole, and that gave me enough coverage on the bracket to hold it still. I went through, rerouted some of my cables, my brake lines, and I didn't reroute my brake lines. For the master cylinder down here at the bottom, and then swung everything up. I disconnected, because this has a factory winch, it had this ground wire that came off of the harness. What I'll do with the ground wire is I'll either put a self-tapping screw in the frame, or I'll find a ground somewhere. It shouldn't be that hard to do, no problem. Take the fuse box, swing it around, and it will reach, and plug it into the factory bracket. Once all that clips down, all I gotta do is just press down on the wiring harness. We'll put some zip ties on it later on, and then once everything heats up, you go through some riding. After time, this wiring harness will mold to this design here, and it'll be just like new. If you notice on the top, when you do yours, right here on the tab, once you cut that tab off, you'll have some holes. In the molding process, they actually mold it with the tab on it, and it'll look like a split in the factory air intake tube. Don't worry about that. That's not a big deal. We'll actually take a PVC cap, a rubber cap, put over top of this with a hose clamp. It's going to cover this piece, so it's not going to be a big deal. It's not going to cause a leak. And the reason why we do this is that later on we want to take our snorkel off. We'll be able to do that and retain our factory air box. Now that all the electronics is out of the way, and our brake reservoir is out of the way, and our coolant overflow is out of the way, as you can see, we have a lot more room to put in our snorkels. Our snorkels is going to come up in between the frame and the radiator and come up through the factory hood. A good idea is now that we have all the electronics in place where we want it, to go through and unplug each one of the connectors and spray some dielectric grease on the inside of it. What dielectric grease is going to do is prevent water from getting into our connectors and shorten out the electronics. A quick explanation on how to do our dielectric grease is, first, what we want to do is unplug our connector. We're going to use a can of dielectric grease. Sometimes you also can get this, and you can also get this in a tube. Same exact thing. You can get this at you can get it at Walmart. You can get it at any auto parts stores. Once our connector is disconnected, we'll take our dielectric grease and we'll spray a good coating on the inside. Don't worry, it's not going to hurt your electronics. We'll take our plug-in and we'll put it back together. And if some of it squishes out, that's fine. That's not a problem. That just means everything is perfectly sealed. We'll go through and we'll do each one of our plugs. We'll go through, do our plugs on our bottom end of our bike. We'll do it on the back end of our bike. We'll do the tail lights, the headlights. We'll do the connectors for our gauge pod. We'll pull apart our controls on our handlebars. We'll also put the bike on the back end and put dielectric grease in the connector on for our fuel pump. Anything that has a plug-in that you've got some kind of current going through, any of the electronics, we're going to put dielectric grease in. Also, don't forget our communication port. When we take our bikes to our dealerships, they hook this up to their computers. Don't forget to put dielectric grease in here. And when you're relocating all of your electronics, be sure that if you can't route your communications port to this plug-in that's located beside your fuse box on the Renegades, I'm not sure exactly where they're located at, but this has to be plugged into our communications port. If not, it'll throw an error. It'll cause problems. So always remember, and when this communication port is not being used by your dealer, it has to be plugged in. With everything out of the way up front, now we can finally start fabbing up our snorkels. What we're going to do is we're going to start with our air intake. That's going to come out of the bottom of our air box. Now there's two ways that we can do this. We can make a solid 90 that comes out, that turns to the left and goes towards the front of the bike. Or we can make a bracket that's here, take some exhaust, some automotive exhaust pipe, come out at a 45, and then take a 45 PVC and run towards the front of the bike. I like the second one better. The 45 seems to be that it allows more airflow into the box. I know when I did this on my 800, it did not feel like I lost any power whatsoever with the 45. It takes a little bit more work, but I think it's worth it. To start, we need to remove our air box. Unbolt the shifter linkage at the transmission. Finally, remove the air box from the four-wheeler. With the air box on the table, remove the air filter. One thing I would highly suggest is taking your stock air filter and pulling it off and throwing it away. Your dealership should sell you a uni replacement filter that flows a lot better and provides a whole lot more protection than this filter. This filter on the inside is just basically a paper filter. This doesn't filter hardly anything compared to the uni filters, the uni replacement filters that your dealerships sell. I know some dealerships that will not sell you these replacement filters, these stock filters, just because of the amount of filtration that it gives you, which is not a lot. This is good for stock if you're bringing it home on a ride around, but I would highly suggest getting you a uni replacement filter.